few people. The orchestra, they had a string quartet for the music. It was inside the church. And then the pastor conducted the funeral virtually out on the lawn, but we had about 100 people that were present on Zoom. And that was quite an adventure, but a wonderful way to connect when we're so far apart. And it was a moving experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it took 2 or 3 people to get, somebody would have to be telling somebody that they're unmuted and to unmute. All that kind of stuff.
That's right. You're muted.
Yeah.
That's another regular feature of Zoom.
Palmer.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Julie and Marnette and Jane and Gordon and Marjorie.
And I was very sorry to hear about your mom.
Thank you very much. She lived almost to 99, and she wanted to vote in the next election for very good reasons. But she didn't. But thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good mother, lived a long while.
Mm-hmm.
And
Had she been ill for a while, or it just came on suddenly?
No, she's in assisted living, needed a wheelchair, but she fell a week ago Sunday, and then needed stitches on her arm. And when she came back from the hospital, she was communicative, but on Monday morning, she might have had a TIA. We don't know, and they never will. They won't know. Because she was uncommunicative, unable to swallow, couldn't talk. So we went, one of my brothers and I went up on Wednesday and called in hospice right away, and she died Saturday on my birthday. So
Oh,
it was an interesting day last Saturday. So.
well, we're thinking about you. We sure are, you and your family.
Yeah, she wanted to be cremated, so no funeral arrangements other than cremation. And she will be scattered on a hiking trail with my dad. So they loved hiking. So.
Oh, very appropriate.
Yeah, yeah.
And who is your mother?
My mother's name was Bobby Shabbat, her real name Barbara,
Okay.
but Bobby, B-O-B-B-I-E, was her name that I knew her by all these years.
I remember her being here a number of times.
She was. She visited, and then of course when my husband was ill, visited quite a bit. So.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Eckert, we can see your face, but we get a picture. But I love the way you put in parentheses how to correctly say your name.
Morning, Jason.
Morning, everybody. It's good to see so many faces.
Yeah, we haven't seen
Jenny.
things. It's great.
Morning.
Are you about ready to send daughter 2 off to school?
I guess so. It's time. Very mixed feelings, but it's good.
Yeah.
So were you all talking about the earthquake before I got on? Okay. Yep. Quite a shock.
I did not
You
feel
feel
it.
it.
I didn't
Really?
feel it.
I didn't feel
Either
it.
way.
Of course, I was listening to John Kirkendall on, which is, earth shattering enough. So.
Mm.
Wow.
What was John doing?
John was teaching the Maloney class on James.
Oh, okay. What time does he do that?
Well, on YouTube,
On
right?
Oh,
John, I think, yeah, you can get them on YouTube.
oh,
And John sent a link this morning. So,
We're not-
I can send you that link. It's not one that you can search for.
oh, okay.
You might have to remind me today. I've got things going on. Well, it is that time, and I don't want to shortchange the Rosses any of their hour of talking. So we will get ready to start here in a minute. Welcome. We are glad to see you again for second week. I want to say a special hello. You'll see a new face on your screen, Marnite Calder. She is a friend of mine from Atlanta. She was a member of the church I served there. She has just moved to St. Albans neighborhood and is likely to join up here at DCPC. She's a friend of Allison Ray's. And I think Allison lived in Atlanta. Is that how you all knew each other, Marnite?
Yes.
Okay, so I knew that they were friends. So welcome, it's good to see you. Welcome everybody. I'm gonna invite you all to go ahead, accept the Rosses. Everybody to go ahead and mute yourself right now. And I'm glad you are here. So, Kimberly Ross has been dating her beau, I believe, if I remember right, since they were not college sweethearts, they were not high school sweethearts, they were junior high sweethearts.
High school.
Cool.
High
Oh, okay.
school.
So they beat the Mays last week.
Yeah. Yeah. Since what?
I was 15.
Yeah, 15 and 16. So about half our lives. It's been a long
Half our
time.
life. So the Rosses you live in St. Albans neighborhood. They have 3 children, 2 girls and a sweet little boy who was baptized about a month ago now. I'm gonna let you take it away from here.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. We're Tyler and Kimberly Ross, like John said. We live here in St. Albans. Can everybody hear us okay? Do a quick sound check before we dig in. Okay, cool. So as John said, we have 3 kiddos. Charlotte's our oldest, she's 5. Annalie just turned 4, she's our middle. And then Jackson is about 10 months old. He was just born last October. And as John said, we appreciate John immensely for helping us jump through the hoops to get him baptized. We had to reschedule a few times, but last month he was baptized finally at DCPC. We've been members of the church for about 3 years now. We moved to Charlotte from Wilmington about 3.5 years ago and just immediately fell in love with DCPC and joined shortly thereafter. We've lived in Davidson proper for a couple of years now. We just certainly love the community. Okay, so I think what we'll do is just kind of jump right in, John, if that's okay. One thing we wanted to talk about is we have some similarities. We've been together for 14 years, and I'm 31, Kimberly's 29, so a good chunk of our lives we've been together. We've been through a lot of formative years together. Certainly a lot of life changes at the same time. And I think one thing that we'll notice today is our faith story lines up in a lot of cases. Some cases we deviate and do our own things, but I think we're going to start just kind of at the beginning with childhood and go from there. So a little bit about me. I was born to an Air Force family. My dad was a career pilot in the Air Force. So we kind of moved all over as a kid. I was born in Texas, moved to places like California, Delaware, Ohio, Washington Capital Region, all of that, and born into a Catholic family. My father was actually baptized the same day that I was. So my father was non-religious growing up, and we were both baptized. I was an infant and he was 26. My mother's from Northeastern Ohio and a very strong Catholic family. So we were raised Catholic. I went to pretty much all the way through high school, Catholic school. So from kindergarten, literally straight through. I think there was 1 year I did public school because we had moved somewhere in Ohio for just a year or two, and we did public quickly and then went right back to Catholic. So most of my upbringing was Catholic school, and that was kind of what I knew. And started to notice some desires in my later high school years to look at my faith in a different light, because we both kind of practiced Catholicism by default, because we were born into it. And Kimberly certainly talked about her childhood as well. But my faith formation, I would say, starting moment for me was, I remember vividly in second grade, I remember being at Catholic school, and our teacher, this is like 94, I remember my teacher asking me, what religion am I? Or she asked the class, like, what religion are you? And I raised my little hand and said, well, we're Christian. And she said, no, you're Catholic. And that just always stuck with me. It's something that, hold on a second, like that's not true. And I remember being like a 5-year-old thinking that. So certainly this isn't about bashing Catholicism. I just think we both come from a Catholic background, so it's important to set that tone. But that was kind of the start of my journey to think about, okay, what truly is important to me as a believer of Jesus, and what is important to me as I grow in my faith, and what do I want to focus on? Kind of starts there. That's basically my childhood in a nutshell. And Kimberly, if you want to talk about yours.
I had a very similar childhood, as Tyler already mentioned, born and raised Catholic. I'm an Irish-Italian family background. So from the minute I can remember, I was attending religion classes. They were part of the curriculum at every school that I attended, and they were like any other academic subject. I really did end up kind of disliking the course because it just became like biology and history class. It wasn't necessarily something I enjoyed learning about, because you were tested on it and you had quizzes and homework, and it was. So beyond just attending Mass every Sunday with my mom and dad, I was also an active member in church, but I was also taking these religion courses every year. And that was kind of my early childhood, high school upbringing, kind of Catholic by default. And then, so Tyler talked about how in high school he kind of already hit this like aha moment. I certainly didn't hit that point in high school. I, kind of just stayed, in this, Catholic lifestyle, mostly because that's what my parents had, raised me to be, and went off to college and basically just pushed my faith to the side entirely. I was so exhausted of learning about my religion, and I didn't see how my faith fit into obtaining that standard college experience. And my mom wasn't forcing me to wake up early on a Sunday and go to Mass, so I wasn't getting up and going. College, I was still very much, I identified as Catholic, but I was far from a practicing Catholic. I was mostly just kind of hanging out. Did you want to touch on college?
Yeah, so we grew up in the Air Force. Like I said, moved around a lot, ended up settling a good chunk of our lives, my life, in the National Capital Region in the Maryland side of Washington, D.C. My dad's kind of twilight tour was at the Pentagon. And we were fortunate, I was able to go to all 4 years of high school and then, follow on 4 years of college in that region, which is how Kimberly and I met and started dating. I actually went to an all-boys high school, and she went to the all-girls sister school. So we scandalous, I guess, because we were together for a long time during that time. But fortunate to kind of grow up there, and Kimberly and I had very different college experiences. Kimberly is a graduate of NC State. I went to the Naval Academy in Annapolis. So we both kind of had very different experiences. And I think when she mentions, college was a turning point for me, I think a lot of that is born of the fact that I had this seed in my mind already, like I said, from second grade, that was, hold on a second. I don't really like the way that Catholicism approaches Christianity. But it was just kind of everything. It's all I knew. And I was a bit scared, to be honest, to look outside of Catholicism, because I thought that would be like a cardinal sin. That's kind of how you're raised, almost to an extent, where it's like you got that Catholic guilt, and it's a thing. But as a plebe, what we call plebe, which is a freshman at the Naval Academy, obviously very challenging. As an 18-year-old, the most challenging year of my life. It's basically a year-long boot camp. I had a chaplain who was assigned to my battalion there, who was a Presbyterian minister. And I really started to open up about my faith, what I wanted to get out of it, and how the role I wanted to play in my life. And I think what first drew me to, first of all, Presbyterianism, but just in general, a refinding of my faith, or like a reformation of my faith, was, accepting that, hey, Catholicism is not the only way. It's okay. We all believe in Jesus and that he was the Son of God and that he died for our sins. Like, there's some minor differences there that I needed to address internally, but I've realized it's okay to explore outside of my traditional setting to find myself and where I wanted to have my faith lie. So he was same with Lieutenant Commander Wallace. He was very helpful. He was there all 4 years that I was there, and really kind of drew me to the side of, hey, it's okay to have some doubts about what you believe. It's okay to explore your faith and don't feel bad about it. You should practice your faith with a questioning attitude, and you shouldn't just take things for face value. You should, be more academic about it to an extent and learn more about it, which I started doing. So certainly college, to me, because of the challenge that I was facing, it was pretty difficult 4 years. That drove me to be a little bit more spiritual and need to have that kind of release, and also gave me an opportunity to review my faith system and what I believed and what I wanted, to be part of my life going forward. And looking back now, I realized it was a formative time in my life. I'm a college student, preparing for active military service, and realized that was a source of strength for me looking back, that I appreciate more now than I think I did in the moment. But kind of certainly that sets the tone for my adult faith formation, was really my college years. And I attribute a lot of that to Lieutenant Commander Wallace, and kind of showing me that it's okay to think outside of my traditional upbringing and be a bit more questioning and a bit more academic about my faith. So we do have some pictures to share. I think it was a great tone set last week, so we want to continue with that. So I think what we'll do is
junior high pictures. Give us some junior high pictures.
Go ahead and share screen real quick, and we'll go through them. I think we planned on talking more through our faith story chronologically, which made sense to us. So we'll kind of go through, try to marry it up with the timeline here. This is me and Kimberly when we were 15 and 16. This is outside of Kimberly's high school. So this is 2006.
Yeah.
And this thing keeps on wanting to move on its own. I apologize. So this is us way back in the day. This is us again. I think we just started dating. We were just brand new to dating at this point, 16, 15. This is me as a young midshipman at the Naval Academy. This is my freshman year, which is why I was so skinny. They were running us like crazy.
You don't want to go that far yet.
And I think we'll stop here. For some reason, our computer likes to jump ahead, so I'm going to go ahead and stop there. But that kind of takes us up to that point in our faith journey. And I'll turn it over back to Kimberly.
Well, again, my college experience wasn't nearly as altering as Tyler's. While he was exploring his faith more, I was probably partying more. I went to NC State and was studying engineering, and that was just not my focus. Like I said, in my early childhood and high school years, I felt like all I did was study religion, and I was constantly surrounded by it, just being at Catholic school. Mass was a regular part of our day-to-day, and going to reconciliation. I just felt so surrounded by it that it was a breath of fresh air when I went to college, and I wanted nothing to do with it. It was also, I didn't have a car, and the Catholic Church at the time, the local Catholic Church in Raleigh, was actually quite a hike. So it just worked in my favor that I couldn't easily get there. So my college time was really just kind of, me taking a step away from my faith altogether, which I think I used to look at in a negative way, but kind of after doing some of the reflection that was part of this activity for us, I realized that it was actually a really good time for me to, even though it wasn't as enlightening as maybe Tyler's college experience, it was certainly eye-opening to some extent, in that it kind of helped me appreciate more of what I was looking for. So again, I guess I thought of it more negatively because I was just totally like anti-faith altogether. I was that rebel child at the time, but it was certainly helpful in some respects. So really the next, I guess, turning point. So college was a little different for Tyler and I. But then as we reflected more on where like the next big stepping stone for us in our faith was really marriage. This part of our life was the starting point of when we kind of had to bring back in religion. So like, you know, where were we going to get married? What kind of ceremony were we going to do? So we had a lot of debate. I guess some of our family expected a Catholic ceremony.
She's Irish and Italian.
Yeah,
So we were kind of not fighting that, but that was something we didn't want to upset, you know.
We weren't anti it, but you know, as we were planning our wedding, we really kind of didn't feel like a Catholic ceremony was what we really wanted, truly. We almost also felt like we weren't really Catholic anymore, so it kind of felt almost like a sin to be doing that. So marriage again was like the next real step for us in terms of our faith and kind of where it, you know, is today. You want to speak?
Yeah, I think I was farther down the path in that respect. I think we both appreciated at that point, you know, the traditions that existed within, especially her side of the family. I mean, my family too. I think my mother, her side is very Catholic, Eastern European Catholic from Slovakia, like very, very devout Catholic. My father's side, kind of not religious, but Kimberly then had the whole Irish and Italian thing, and we just wanted to make sure that we were respectful of that. And this is, again, kind of still new in our faith formation. I think we'll talk about later. We started having kids is when we really decided we needed to do what was right for us. But we had a Catholic ceremony. It was great. We did have the abbreviated Catholic ceremony without communion, so it was only like 20 minutes instead of an hour and a half. But this is us on the screen. I took it off slideshow because it seems like it wants to jump around. Hopefully you guys can see this okay. This is me as a young lieutenant in the Marines. That's my beautiful wife. Yep, and this is at the chaplain. So we got married young. Kimberly was 21. I was 23. Jumped right into pre-deployment preparation right after we got married. So actually didn't have a honeymoon until 2 years ago. We went to Europe for our 5-year anniversary. But this is us at that time in our lives. So I think the next step then is, you know, like I kind of alluded to, I deployed pretty quickly. First deployment, went to Afghanistan as a Marine. And that is another kind of turning point for me because obviously I was in a very stressful situation for over a year, you know, overseas and fighting bad guys. So my dad actually, of all people, sent me with a little devotional. It was a little like four military, you know, devotional. It's a little thing, fits in your little pocket. I would read, you know, one verse a night just as part of a wind down or whatever. And certainly that gave me some focus and helped me to, you know, have a reservoir of fortitude to pull from as I'm away from my family, my young wife, who I think we spent like 70% of our first year of marriage apart because I was gone. So I looked to my faith in general as a source of strength during that time, which was helpful. We certainly had access to chaplains and religious services and support when I was deployed, which was great. But really looking back again, I can realize how I used that to kind of pull myself through a lot of that, especially some of the tough stuff that, you know, unfortunately happened. So here's, if I can move this forward. Here's First Lieutenant Tyler Ross in Afghanistan. If I can get this to load. Of course it doesn't want to load. We'll just do this again. There we go. That's me. I used to have a mustache. They'll make fun of me. Only when I was deployed. We called it my Afghanistache. It's just a tradition. Your first deployment, you grow facial hair. Unfortunately, I look like I'm 12, so it didn't grow very well. But this is me. So that was an important, point for me actually as the one deployed, and then Kimberly certainly as the spouse who was at home, kind of waiting for me to come home safely. Do you have any thoughts on that time frame?
Yeah, I mean, so we kind of catered to our families in terms of how we got married. We kind of found somewhat of a compromise, but I think ultimately we, Tyler and I gave in more to our families to cater to that, Catholic upbringing. So even at that time, Tyler and I, we had both graduated from college, and we were both, he was active military, and I was working still in Raleigh. And, since we were past the college years and having that kind of serve as our lifestyle and our support, other academic friends and just being on campus, we really started to feel we were both in North Carolina, away from our family. We don't have any other family in North Carolina. So we were both starting to really feel that missing part of like a home away from home. So we still had some friends, but I mean, again, we were outside of those college years, and our friends from college had kind of gone off in different directions following where the job was taking them. And so we were feeling kind of like we were missing that like local support. Obviously we had support from our family, but that was somewhat at like a distance, excuse me. So I think we started to really feel that after college, around the time we were getting married. And then, as he's already mentioned, he deployed. And while he was gone, I admittedly at this point was still not really practicing any type of, religion. I was still pretty uninterested in faith, even while he was deployed. I have to admit, but I was still really feeling during deployment like I was missing that extended family. So that feeling really started after we start with our marriage and continued on through deployment. And it was not until his return home did we really decide, so we're both now stateside. We are now officially living together, because at that point he was on the coast and I was in Raleigh.
I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, north of Wilmington, and Kimberly was in Raleigh.
So at that point, we really decided that it was time to start getting more serious about our faith. So
that takes us to,
let's see if this one loads.
This guy wants to load for us. There we go. So this was our first house. So Kimberly, the amazing woman she is, I was gone for a year. In that time, she moved herself prepared to move herself from Raleigh, where she was making very good money as a chemical engineer, for Merck, who's one of the top 3 pharmaceutical companies in the world, to move all the way out to Wilmington, North Carolina, which is where I was. She made a huge sacrifice there to come with me. Had a house built while I was deployed, was able to sign all the documents online from a war zone, which was amazing. Came home to this, basically. This is like literally the week after I came home, in front of our new house. So pretty amazing. Kimberly would move down from Raleigh about a month later, and was able to fortunately work from distance for Merck for a little short time afterwards, while we got settled back. But this is a picture also of Kimberly like a week pregnant, looking back. So
not really a week.
Charlotte was born almost exactly 9 months after I came home. So this is right in that time frame, right when I first came back. This is a good picture to show kind of the start of our new post-deployment life. Also, kind of important to note, I was on a 5-year contract and decided, especially after Kimberly got pregnant, did not want to spend my time away from my family, and grew up with my dad gone a lot in the Air Force. And so this was also a deciding point for me to do my time and then get on out and stabilize. As I moved around my whole life, I wanted to give my kids a home. We love North Carolina. So this is kind of indicative as well of that time in our lives when we decided to settle down. I think this is the most important shared experience for faith formation that we have, because this is the time where Kimberly and I realized, hey, we're having a baby, we have a home, I'm home now, life is settling a bit, and there was still a big missing piece. And the missing piece was the church family. Like, we missed that. You know, say what you will about Catholicism. One thing they do a great job of is in Catholic schools, you have the school as part of the church. It's one big community. It's like an extended family. It really is. They do a great job at that. We were missing that piece. You know, we both wanted that. We had that as kids. We didn't necessarily agree with the teachings of the Catholic Church, or at least the polity and the way it was structured, and some of the man-made tradition. You know, we can go on and on about that. But I think the community is what we really missed the most. So we were fortunate. Right after our first was born, we decided to really actively start looking for a community. And, you know, driving through our little town of Hampstead, North Carolina, there's a little white church called Topsail Presbyterian Church. Decided to start there, mostly because of my experiences in college with our Presbyterian chaplain, and also just because it was like the closest, to be honest, one of the closest, maybe second closest church to us. There's a Baptist church across the street.
There was a Catholic church, the closest to us.
Oh yeah, well that
but
wasn't.
we
We
didn't even
weren't
entertain
considered.
that idea.
And fell in love immediately. One for one. We didn't go anywhere else. We went to Topsail Presbyterian for one service, immediately felt warm and welcome. Never went back anywhere else, at least not outside the denomination, because we just felt, for me, it was everything I ever wanted. You know, I'd learned about Presbyterianism. I'd learned about the tradition as a Reformed tradition. I learned about, obviously, John Calvin and Scotland and all the history there. And really the thing that I fell in love with the most was the polity. I think in a lot of cases, Protestant churches have a lot of similar beliefs, but the polity I loved because it allowed for the refreshing aspect of congregation involvement in decision making. In the Catholic Church, the pastor is like the king, like he sets the tone for everything. I loved how we had a session. I love that whole concept. I saw it as kind of like the Congress of the congregation, and the pastor is important because the pastor helps guide and helps enact, but the session really represents the congregation and allows individual members to be involved in decision making in the direction that the church is going in the community. I love that, and also we love the fact that Presbyterians are so invested in the education of little ones, and we had a baby at that time. And just knowing that PCUSA specifically has such an emphasis on children's ministry, which we'll get to. Kimberly's actually on the committee for children's ministry here, was super important to us because it just it gave us a feeling that we were going to have a home for our kids, not just for ourselves once they got older. And we fell in love with it. So I think that for us was the aha moment that we both had at the same time. This is where we need to be, close enough to the Catholic Church because it's one of the first Protestant denominations, still holds a lot of the same liturgical aspects to it, but different enough that it does away with a lot of the man-made tradition, focuses mostly on scripture, which is what I was craving spiritually. And then from the community perspective, allows more involvement from us, made us feel like we were more part of a greater community, and gave us the feeling that we were going to have a church family that our kids could be raised within. So what Kimberly's showing you now is this is Charlotte as a baby. This is me and her, 25, 26, about 5 years ago. She was a little baby then. This is kind of right in the middle when we were going through this. I think this is probably right after we found Topsail Presbyterian Church, because this is the 4th of July, and I think we first started going in May. This is right after we had I remember feeling too very excited when Sunday would roll around at this point, because it was like, I was craving it. You know, I mean, it was just, I feel like I finally found what I was looking for. And I think Kimberly took my lead as well, and has come around to that as well.
Yeah, no, when we stumbled upon our new church, it fulfilled the gap that we were looking to fill. And it to the point where when we posted on social media pictures from Jackson's baptism just a few weeks ago, we still had some of our old church members commenting on it. And when we go back once a year during the summer to the beach, and we make a point, we couldn't this year with COVID, but we make a point of attending a Sunday service at our old church. And we still, I mean, it's like just walking home again in some respects. There's so many familiar faces, and everyone still remembers us, and they've been such a supportive family. And that was what we really needed at the time. I know Tyler talks a lot about the faith aspect, but for me, it was especially raising a baby in an area that I wasn't familiar with. I hadn't lived there very long and had no family. That was what I really needed to help support me through it all. And the picture that we just forwarded to, that is our second daughter that was born. So we had Charlotte in February of 2015. And then we had Annalie in July of 2016. And everything about that little girl, the 9 months I was pregnant with her, was all normal. She was born again in July 25th of
We're still in
2016.
Wilmington at this point as well.
And she was about a month old when I was still on maternity leave, and I just knew something wasn't right. She just wasn't quite what she should have been at that age. So we pushed and pushed, did a lot of doctor's appointments to the point where we actually were inpatient for about a month. We spent some of that time at a hospital in Wilmington, and then they transferred us to Duke Children's Hospital in Durham. And this is where our church community, I'm gonna let you
stepped up to the plate. Yeah, it was a tough time. So I just gotten out of the Marines. I work for Novant Health. I've always worked for Novant Health as a civilian. We have, some of you may know, a presence out on the coast. We just purchased New Hanover, which is the big system out there, so that's exciting. But she was inpatient at New Hanover for a while. Annalie has liver disease, and as a baby was on the list for a transplant, which is very tough. Probably the toughest part of our lives, certainly tougher than deployment. First of all, let's go ahead and set the tone before I get emotional. She's happy, healthy as can be right now. She's in the 80th percentile in height and weight. We just got her checked out this week. She's completely fine. She'll always have liver disease. What she has called biliary paucity. She has fewer bile ducts than you and I do, or than most humans do, which just means her body takes longer to filter out toxins. Body is an amazing thing, and as a young little one, just dealing with the excess toxin in her body, it was a race against time. We needed to pump her full of drugs to get to the point where she could fight it off herself, and her little body could mature enough to fight off the excess amount. A good way to think about it, right? You have a colander and you run water through it, okay? If you have none of the holes blocked and everything's flowing through, it's going to flow through nicely. If you have 40% of the holes blocked, which is what Annalie has, water's going to flow through, but you always have an excess, like a reservoir, right? That's what she has in her body. She's got an excess of toxin that most people don't have, because she doesn't have enough holes to push through. Your liver's like a sponge. So we were waiting for her body to catch up and produce the appropriate enzymes to counteract that. Well, one of the most, I think, faith-filled moments of my life, and I think Kimberly's, was we were going to Duke every week, from Wilmington to Durham. She was on the transplant list. We had already been given this binder like this thick for what to expect for an infant transplant. And we went back one more time just to verify some counts, like just to make sure that they would match her appropriately and whatnot. And we had noticed this is once a week, right? So one Friday we went, and yep, she was definitely on. The next week goes by, we go back on another Friday. We know she was always very sickly, right? Her body was spending so much of its energy fighting off this disease that she was so tiny and skinny. Like she couldn't keep weight on. She had to have this high calorie formula, all this. We noticed she started to look a little bit more full, and her color started to come back. She was very yellow, like any liver patient is typically. We didn't want to put too much stock in it. And I remember vividly, I'm a Carolina fan, first of all, okay? I'm a Tar Heel through and through. A lot of love in my heart for Duke, though, because I remember vividly walking into the doctor's office. She went through her standard blood draw, all the poke and prodding that she had to do. We waited for labs to come back. I remember her doctor walking into the room with tears in her eyes, saying that she wouldn't need to have a transplant because her body, figured it out, which is amazing. And the incredible thing was we moved up for baptism, not knowing what was going to happen. And so we were told that news on Friday. On Sunday, she was baptized. So we got to share that with our family and friends and church community. And now she's happy and healthy. but that's one reason why, the church means so much to us. In our faith, that's where it was most tested, because we were both kind of just like, why would you do this to us? We're good people. Charlotte, our oldest, everything just perfect, sailed through everything. Very intelligent young girl now. And Annalie, it was very shattering for us to think that we might, either lose her or something would happen. She's good now. She's completely healthy, but that was the biggest test of our faith, and I think the biggest source of strength afterwards, because we just realized how important that church family was to us, especially in that moment, throughout that whole thing. And then I just remember being so excited not only to share that with our family and our friends, but to share that with our church community, because they were such a big part of it. And so, yeah, sorry. It was a very emotional time for us. And I think that was really probably as adults, the biggest aspect of our faith formation was that time.
Yeah, and looking back, I never appreciated how I had taken such a backseat role to my faith. I mean, growing up, I was Catholic because that's what my parents raised me to be. There was a period of time in which I kind of stepped away from faith entirely. And then when we got pregnant with Charlotte, our oldest, Tyler kind of took the lead on finding, or that next step in our faith, and finding that church community that we were looking for. And I was really following his lead, and hadn't been very active in my faith up to this point. And this was the turning point for me, where faith really came back into my life, and I took more of an active role in it. I would say I was Catholic because my parents, and then I was Presbyterian because my husband. But at that point, my faith was mine. I took control of it. I will admit, when it all first started, when we first found out or discovered Annalie was really sick, and we were living in the hospital with a 1.5-year-old, trying to juggle her at home. And I, had just come off maternity leave. I actually took an extra week unpaid because it was like the week before my last week of maternity leave that she went into the hospital. And we were depleting every PTO we had. We were, constantly going back and forth to the hospital. And medical bills. It was those first couple months of kind of dealing with Annalie, her liver disease, and trying to juggle it and give her the care that she needed. I doubted big time. Especially as the mother, I carried this baby for 9 months. I questioned, what did I do wrong? How did I do it? All these things that, so initially with Annalie's illness, I went through a just doubting period. But as we kind of got that good news, she was baptized and things kind of started turning around. I started to kind of see the light, and again, take control of my own faith and appreciate it as mine and not my parents or my husband's. Our little girl is a miracle.
Yeah, she is.
There's no other explanation for it. God had his hands in making her who she is today. And yeah, that's a picture of Annalie's baptism.
So you can see her colors come back. This happened like between a week, like where she was yellow one Friday, and here she is nice and pink and healthy. It was just incredible. Like, I've never felt God, I think, more present than in that week in my life. And I'll be honest with you guys, it was a tough time in life in general for us, right? As a Marine who went to war, I've certainly dealt with PTSD. I haven't handled it in the most healthy ways. So to go through this, I just gotten out, took a pay cut to get out, didn't know what the future would hold. So we were financially stressed. We were stressed with Annalie being sick. I was still dealing with some of my internal stressors, still am to this day, wasn't handling it the most healthy way. And then to realize that God was like, I just felt like no matter what, I love you and I'm here for you. And even if this didn't turn out the way it did, we're very fortunate things turned out the way that it did with Annalie. She still has liver disease. We still have to monitor. Fortunately, her last Duke appointment on the schedule is next in a couple weeks, and then she just goes for her, doesn't have to go back. She just goes to her standard PC for checkups once a year, which is a miracle in itself. But God, I remember feeling like his hand was on our shoulders, like, no, it's okay, I've got you. And to see it in such a vivid way of sick one day on the transplant list, the next week off the transplant list, perfectly healthy, and then 48 hours later, she's baptized. Pretty amazing to us. So that definitely is the biggest, I think, formation moment in our faith as a couple, certainly in our lives to this extent. Now moving on from the super serious stuff, as a Novant Health employee, I was fortunate to get promoted after about a year. My current role, so I'm in charge of supply chain and logistics for Novant Health. So if I hear the word PP one more time, I might throw up. It's been a crazy time, but we moved out here. Very fortunate. Of course, many of you know Novant Health is kind of headquartered here in Charlotte. So we moved out here in 2017. I vividly remember Kimberly's best friend from college, the godmother of our oldest, is from Huntersville, and I remember coming out here at one point in like 2014, something like that. And we were driving through from Huntersville to Mooresville. I remember driving through this cute little town. And this is relatively recently after a certain three-point shooter took his team to the Elite Eight in 2009, whenever that was. So I remember driving through Davidson and thinking, man, this is a cute little town. This is really cool. So when we were looking at moving to Charlotte, we initially gravitated towards Davidson. Saw some of the price tags of the houses and decided, okay, we're going to back off on that and look more towards where I was working, where I still work, our distribution centers in Kannapolis. So we actually just snagged a townhome about 5-6 miles from work. Just to base ourselves, obviously Charlotte is very overwhelming as a city and area to learn just from distance. We decided just to base work and figure out where we wanted to go from there. But again, did research before we got there, knowing how important our faith community was to us in Wilmington, and found DCPC online. Felt kind of like another God thing that we kind of gravitated to PCUSA as former Catholics, that we wanted, or at least wanted to explore the option of being in Davidson, just because I thought it was a cute little town back when I first blew through it. And then to find out that Davidson is a Presbyterian school with a Presbyterian church on campus was kind of like, okay, this might be another sign. Went to DCPC like the second or third weekend that we moved to Charlotte, have never gone back. So we've been very fortunate. We're 2 for 2 so far with Presbyterian churches. We've been so fortunate. Immediately felt warm and welcome. Immediately fell in love with the community, with the church, with everything that has to do with DCPC. Just, again, filled our heart and soul. I think one thing we appreciate too, living on the coast, smaller community, not as many folks kind of our age, which we love to an extent because we had a lot of folks with a lot of wisdom and experience that we could lean on, especially during that tough time. But here too, one thing we've loved is a lot of folks in kind of our age range with kids our age. So our girls, now that they're old enough to be in preschool and now Charlotte's going to kindergarten, to make friends and be social, DCPC's brought that into our lives as well, with a bunch of younger couples with younger kids around the same age as ours. It's just been, again, phenomenal. We decided that we wanted to be a bit more involved when we got here. Topsail Presbyterian, very small, I think congregation probably practicing like 100, 150 folks. So coming to DCPC was kind of overwhelming at first. I'm an ordained elder, so I was an elder on session at Topsail Presbyterian before we moved away. So I knew I wanted to get involved. We both did. Decided to take a year or so and just kind of observe, because there was so much more to do at DCPC. But we eventually settled on, Kimberly right now is serving on the Children's Ministry Committee as an active member and absolutely loves it. And I am actually now a youth group leader for 6th and 7th grade boys. So decided to get more involved in that aspect with the kiddos, especially that we have kids. I think that's a huge element to our faith life too now. It actually was what makes it very difficult during COVID to not have, is that interaction with just people. We just miss that. Like, that's one thing that we love so much about our church community here, is people from all walks of life, different, generations, shapes, sizes, and our kids get to be involved in that. And we miss that terribly. But that has been a huge source of strength as well, just learning a new area. Now we've been here 3.5 years. We feel fairly settled. We've lived in Davidson now for two plus years. So not only do we feel like we're part of the future church community, but now we're definitely part of the local Davidson community. So we miss our folks dearly, but we're fortunate to still be able to spend time one-on-one with a lot of them, and hopefully when we get back to somewhat normal, we'll be able to jump right back in. But that again kind of reaffirms the fact that our faith journey started really with our family, and that has been the driving force. I think that continues to keep it the central focus in our life.
Yeah, I mean, our move to Charlotte was a fresh start. We found DCPC that focuses or had the resources for our children, which was very important to us. The way we're involved in church is with the young, the youth of the church. So we were certainly thankful for that, and for DCPC. We have struggled through COVID, as many have, just having that distance from our extended family, because again, we really don't have any family in North Carolina. So our church family is our home away from home. So my
mom and sister are here, but they moved down after we did, so that's fair.
But still, I mean, we lean, ever since having our first child, we've leaned a lot on our church family, especially during our time with Annalie, and then just now that we've got 3 young ones. So I would say at the beginning of this year, we were in a good place. We were happy with where we were, and then COVID, as you know, it's taken a toll on so many. It has. I wouldn't say we're in the same spot we were in the beginning of the year, but we're still trying to focus on the light at the end of the tunnel. Some days are harder than others, but sitting here today, I would argue my faith may not be as strong as it once was, but we're working on it and trying to keep faith and know that this is just temporary. So.
I think this is actually, I think we'll look back on this hopefully as a good challenge, where because the family community aspect is so important to us, I think it's important for us to remember to stay focused on the actual faith piece, right? Like as well, like teaching our children and learning more ourselves about the Bible and Jesus and what he did for us, and just understanding that is more part of our family too. So hopefully we can look back on this as a time where it forced Kimberly and I to be more mouthpieces to our children about our religion and our faith, and therefore learn more ourselves about it, and be bigger proponents of it. And because we're so fortunate to have folks like John, all of our wonderful pastors, Jenny, and the staff that do all of our children's ministries, is amazing. But it also allows us to be more involved, which is why I love the whole concept of adult Sunday school. Has been great because it challenges us to be the mouthpieces and the purveyors as well at home, as opposed to just relying too heavily on the church staff to do them for us. It gives us the ability to be more involved in their faith formations of children, which is fantastic. And this picture, these are our 3 just taken recently. This right here, if you see my mouse, that's Annalie, as you can see, perfectly healthy. She's actually as tall and heavier than her sister, but don't mention that because Charlotte gets very upset about that. But Annalie is right here. John Ryan must have got to her because she is a huge Georgia Bulldog fan, and I don't know why. We don't have any tie to Georgia, but John must have gotten to her at Sunday school at some point. So she's a little John Ryan here. Charlotte, here's our oldest right here. She starts kindergarten next week. And then here's Jackson, who's our brand new baby boy. Happy and healthy, fortunately. And then here's us with our wonderful Mr. Ryan here a few weeks ago in front of DCPC. Certainly a baptism we'll never forget. Very fortunate to be able to do it. And honestly, it was actually pretty cool. His godparents are in California and Virginia right now, respectively. So to do this from distance was actually great because we got to have virtual attendance from everybody that was involved in this in his life. So it was great. So I think
Stop talking.
that's probably, we got 10 minutes left, I think. I know we dumped a lot of info on you, but hopefully we did a decent job, John, sticking to timeline here.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was great. So we got about 10, 12 minutes left. What questions do you all have for the Rosses? Just go ahead and unmute yourself and fire away.
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Here's one from Clown and Julie Pepper. What suggestions do you have for us to keep families with young children connected during the pandemic? I think that's a tough question. In fact, we asked the same question of the family who went last week. I think so. Kimberly right now stays at home, which is it's a blessing and a curse to an extent because she doesn't get to escape ever. But it means that fortunately, she has taken complete control and an amazing job with keeping the kids connected. I think the Children's Ministry Committee actually has done a great job putting out resources and whatnot to help us get through this time. I'll defer to you because you're at home with the kiddos.
It's tough. I wish I had a good answer. I know, yeah, the Children's Ministry Committee has gone back and forth on many ideas and tried different things. And, every family is different too. So what works for one family doesn't work well for another. Just between our 5 and 4-year-old, it's vastly different in what they can handle and understand. The way I feel like, at least I try to stay connected remotely is they are very visual, and Zoom, the computer doesn't count for them. So we try to, at least every weekend, we make a point of walking into town and walking by church and just kind of being in the vicinity, just kind of, I think it helps the kids feel grounded and just in an area that they're familiar with. I mean, they're not physically inside and they're not seeing those faces that they used to see all the time, but just being at church for them, I don't know, it seems to give them somewhat of a sense of calm and like, okay, so yes, there's a lot going on that's different that they're not used to, but here's something that I am familiar with. And something I can hold on to is like, not everything is drastically different. Church is physically still here.
Yeah.
Are we able to go inside? No, but when they went inside for the baptism a couple weeks ago, they were running around like crazy.
They were
I think
just
they
like,
forgot.
oh my gosh, I missed this. I was like, yes.
They
yes,
forgot
I love
how
that.
to be in service altogether. But I don't know. I just, that's the best answer I have. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, we're by no means experts. I think we're just doing it by
No.
committee. I mean, Jackie, she just commented. We lean a lot on our fellow parents to figure this out too. A lot of our fellow parents who have kids around our age, our kids' ages, have been a source of strength as well, just to bounce ideas off of and understand, especially school. We have a lot of kindergartners this year that Charlotte's in the same boat with, and understanding, just having the resource to talk to and work through those challenges that we're all facing has been helpful. That network that church has provided to us as well has been very key to keeping everybody sane and engaged and entertained during this time.
Other questions or comments?
Hey y'all, this is Elizabeth Mills. I live right up the street.
Yeah.
Hang on. I'll put my video back on. There you go. Hey, I live right up the street. And so seriously, I know that we have to keep our distance, but I could always take somebody for a little bit since I'm not working.
I
And it's
appreciate it.
right down the street.
Every time we
Y'all
walk
think
past.
about that. I certainly taught preschool for 16 years. I think I could do that. If nothing else, we could sing.
I was
There
gonna
you
say,
go.
that's
Minutes
what
and go
Charlotte
back.
wants to do. She wants to sing with
Exactly.
you.
We walk past your
Exactly.
house all the time, and every time she always mentions like, "There's Miss Elizabeth's house." So definitely, maybe just to get together and do some choir or something.
I know. Well, my TCU flag bit the dust, but he would fix it for me because it would get all wonked over. And so thank you for that.
I think
So
Elizabeth.
I know it took so much courage to do this, and it really does enrich all of us to hear stories like this. And it's just affirming. So thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
And y'all are doing a great job.
Oh, thank you. And I think a
3
little birdie,
children, I can't even imagine. So.
I think a little birdie heard about your flag, and maybe around Christmas time you'll have some replenishment. We'll see. Charlotte will let that go.
It looks so bad that Andrew said, "Mom, you got to take that down." It just looks so bad. So anyway, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or thoughts as we get ready to wrap up?
Yes, I do have one comment. I realized how young you all were when I looked at your wedding picture and thought, wow, they still look like their wedding picture.
It's been
That's
8 years.
So far gone.
It's been 8 years. We just, yeah, I guess I
Yeah,
always
you still look like your wedding pictures.
Thanks. Well, Kimberly and I always joke, we're like, we still look young, we're fortunate, but when we age, I feel like we're going to age swiftly because we've retained a lot of the youth look, but yeah, we appreciate it.
Make sure you read the chat. You got some people just praising you today, Tyler and Kimberly. Thank you. Next week, we have the Clifton. Cecil's on. Not out to you. I think he and Jenny were what, elementary sweethearts? Did you all meet in elementary school, Cecil?
No, John, it was a little bit later than that.
So you all are breaking the cycle. Tyler and Kimberly, thank you. You all, thank you. You did a wonderful job. So thank you. Lots of clapping. So let's pray. Good and gracious God, we thank you for Kimberly and Tyler for their faithfulness. For your faithfulness, even when we don't recognize it. We thank you for all the good things in our lives. Lord, continue to provide for us. Continue to call us together. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all. We'll see you hopefully in worship in a little bit. Take care. We'll see you back next Sunday. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.